much for coming on the show. It's great to finally meet you in person nowadays, because this is how we do it through Zoom. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chris, for having me today. So I'm Nizar Benazzouz. So I am, let's say, an innovation expert in a sense, because not only I've been born with the digital sort of IT transformation in the 2000s year, right? 2000, 2001, more or less, the big jump or big revolution in data and IT, but also because I work in this area. So I specialize in, I'm an IT engineer basically, and then I continued with MBA and the PhD in innovation management, which is pretty much really focused on the social, more, I would say, organizational side of the innovation, not only the technical side. So it's both backgrounds which are nice to have in today's very changing world, I would say. And yeah, that's pretty much about my career. I also teach innovation and entrepreneurship at school right now. I have dozens of clients, international clients, but in the past 10 years mostly around Paris area, but also in Barcelona and in Dubai as well. And yeah, so just supporting my clients to reach their goals in terms of transformation, digital transformation mostly.
So I mean, it's funny when you think about innovation as a concept, it's like, how do most of your customers define innovation? Like, how do you pitch innovation to your customers?
Well, that's a tricky one, right? Because if you think about life, and that's a bit more what I explained in my book, I just wrote a book called The Innovative Animal a couple of months ago, which is online now. But really, there are two kind of views, if you want to just classify the word a bit to put more order in things. They are the business as usual, right? Sort of things, just doing things normally the same way daily, and it's a process, and you just need to respect the process. And so this is very order oriented, right? And you have innovation, which is about change. and not only
disorder, chaos.
Yeah, chaos, right? It's chaos, but not in a bad way. It's chaos in order to achieve a better order. That's the difference, right? So it's a transition toward the better order. And for people to understand that there is a better order out there, and that I need to go through this phase of uncertainty and chaos, and like, it's just hard for them to accept it as a human beings, our nature, right? We want order, we prefer order and certainty rather than chaos. And it's our evolution. And so, yeah, you need to pitch it the right way. You need to tell them why you need the change right now, and not like in the future, maybe. Why can't we just postpone it, right, in 10 years? And justify it with what, financially speaking, in terms of organization, in terms of the impact on their work, on their lives daily. For example, if we talk about employees, why would, for example, changing the SAP or Salesforce system would be good for them? What is the value for it, right? Just justify the value. And that's really the first skill, or the main skill for a project manager or an entrepreneur in general to pitch, right? So just pitching the idea and push it for the next order. So yeah, that's
so it's easy. It's easy to attack a pain point. See, it's almost like innovation, from my perspective, seems like, how they say when you're trying to pitch something, you have to pitch a pain reliever, not a vitamin, right?
Exactly.
And a lot of times people consider something like innovation a vitamin, not a painkiller. But if you ask me, it is a painkiller. They just don't see it as that. They just see it as something nice to have in addition to what they're already doing. But it addresses the pain. They don't see how it addresses the pain. How do you get that message across?
Yeah, I mean, look, there is something called pain points when doing consulting assignments mostly in external clients. So you go and you gather people from ideally from different backgrounds, if the project is transversal, for example. And the idea is, the first thing you do is some sort of workshop, right? So you need to have this empathy, because you come as a project manager, you come as an entrepreneur, and you're like, okay, I have my ideas, I understand so many things, but it's not enough. You don't know you don't know what's the sickness, right? You have a big idea about the sickness, that's lack of productivity, lack of speed, time to market, etc. But you need to go and talk to people and just do a workshop and get them to interact with each other, because everybody has its own sort of mindset, right? Like VR system.
Yeah.
And they have their own knowledge, their own data. We are data-based organisms, and so we think we know everything, but we don't. So we need to cross different views to get the best ideal kind of view, right? And prioritize points. So we have, for example, 20 pain points, but what are the real pain points that we need to tackle? Because we have a limited budget, obviously. So what are the next 3, 4 pain points to start with first? And then we'll see in the next, whatever, next phase of the project. So it's a delicate kind of balancing exercise between like different egos, different job positions, different people with different perspectives. So yeah, it's fun and challenging at the same time, I would say.
Can you tell us a little bit about like maybe 1 or 2 examples of how you impacted these organizations when you work with them?
Sure, of course. I can think of, for example, one big project, which is about not necessarily about technology itself, but how do we get to become more user-centric, right? And this is also a kind of innovation, because keep in mind that we don't just mean AI when we talk about innovation. It's not only AI or 3D printing or all the cool stuff that
well, that's a lot of people make that
the
mistake. They think it's the technology, but it's not the technology at all.
No, definitely. Technology is the easiest part. Trust me. It's like engineers do that very well, and we don't. And most big groups in industry, they don't develop their own products. They just outsource and like get the technology. But the hardest part is the change, managing the change. And so back to your question. So there's this idea of user value, for example. So most organizations are very oriented into finance, so the financial side. A project brings ROI or it doesn't. So we prioritize by this kind of notion, right? Return on investment.
Isn't that like ROI. Every organization?
True. And I mean, unless you are Apple or Google, right? When you have a lot of liquidity.
It's like ROI. It's like the number of times that somebody said, "Oh, what's the ROI on this? What's ROI?" When you're trying to innovate within an organization, it's like, well, the ROI is, we don't know. We don't really know.
It's so hard. Trust me. Sometimes it's so hard to, like, for example, say, what's the ROI of bringing AI to different processes in the organization? It's hard to assess. It's just guesses and hypotheses, right? And just simulations.
Especially when you're trying to change a culture. When you're trying to change a culture of a company to be more innovative, how do you measure that success, right? I mean, it's almost impossible. It's all
the easiest kind of. I mean, I will go back to your question at some point eventually.
Sorry,
but the easiest, because this is a nice topic too. The easiest way to measure ROI, it happens when you have sort of selling. You sell a product, you create a new product, iPhone, and you sell. So you just have measuring the revenues. Or you can call what you call cost reduction. This is another financial value, which is you reduce costs. So you replace, for example, a team of people by a machine. So the machine costs this, the people cost this, and you do your math and you have your cost reduction. But other things are more like hypotheses than anything else. But I was focusing on, I was actually part of this, what we call digital performance team, which is about this financial value. And I had to complement it with user value. And that was challenging because when you come and you say, okay, there are other metrics, other KPIs that are more user focused, like user satisfaction, user engagement, all this kind of analytics that we don't necessarily see as a user and as a company. And you need to convince them that it makes sense to track these, although you're not an purely IT player. Then it gets a bit challenging, and you need to do a lot of work with different teams and do a pilot phase and show that there is value from it and show them some nice tracking and action plan from it. For example, if user satisfaction is say like 50%, he will not come back and use your application. So you need to be very aware of that. And so it was a nice project. So it's about organization or process sort of innovation, right? You bring a new team, a new kind of way of working into the organization, and you change the culture a bit to be more user-centric. So that was a fun project. What else can I say? Challenging. Also, I had I think one of the most challenging was SAP. Generally, when it's about ERP projects, big ones, right? So ERP for the audience is mostly like enterprise, like management tool, right? Resource management tools or resource planning. And so the idea is they have many kind of silos working together, and you have finance working with accounting, working with IT, working with production, and it just gets too messy at some point. It's like it's such a big program, and you have so many teams, and it's like the managing all of this. It's a challenge, right? And keeping the budget on the right track. It's not easy, but I would say it brings a lot of value, because you bring the silos, right? And you get rid of all the Excel sheets, and everybody knows what the other side is doing in real time and so on. So it's more, I think it's very good value for companies, big companies.
It's interesting. You should mention that because silos they're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's almost like you don't want to break the silo because people love living in these silos, but you almost want to make them transparent so you can actually see what other people are doing in the other silos. So if you just break the silos down, then everything sort of falls apart because everybody has these and the reason the silos are there is because people like it like that. They like these kind of individualized, I'm going to work for my department, I'm going to work for my department. But if you can sort of just make them transparent so that everybody can see what everybody else is doing, that's way more helpful than everybody sitting in their silo.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, definitely, it goes back again to Chris, to our human nature, right? As I said, like we like to feel safe, right, in our kind of small zone, and it's part of the Maslow pyramid basics, right? It's just safety, and we need to feel safe. And it's like a neighborhood, right? When you have neighborhood, everybody has its own house. We just try to keep it safe, but you don't want to be in a neighborhood where everybody's just closing the windows and nobody's just shutting their garden. Is too much, right? It's just, there is no communication, no fun, right? You want. Yeah, okay. You respect your role, you respect your kind of zone and what we call it your perimeter, pretty much your scope. But then we want also to work together and just like I can give you a help with with your garden, but next time you give me a help with the door, and so it's just collaboration together. And in the companies, it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things it's a fallacy that everything can go back to a steady state because the status of life is actually chaos, right? It's like human beings have we've overlaid some order on top of the chaos, but underneath it all, it's all chaos, and it just keeps coming back out again. So we need to understand that chaos is the natural order of things, and we're the ones who are applying order to the chaos. So when people think about, oh, we have to get things back to steady state again, well, the reality is there's no such thing as steady state, because once you've got to the point where you go to steady state, things change again and again and again. So the change just continues on and on. And that's why innovation is so important, because you need to stay on the edge of that change. You need to surf the change.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very very deep topic, I think. I touched on it on the book in more like philosophical, and also it's interesting to see also the eastern side of things, because we are very focused on the Western society, right, Europe and the US. But it's interesting to see the game of yin and yang, for example, right, and how both interact with each other, order and chaos, to create something. And that's what's fun. You don't want you don't want too much chaos neither, right? Because it's, I mean, from our perspective, it's too much danger, too much uncertainty. A startup that's in total chaos will never succeed, for example, right? You need some processes. People need to know where they're going. Otherwise, they're just not going to follow you, for example.
They need to overlay some order on the chaos.
You need to overlay some order.
Pure chaos.
Yeah, but then they need to be mindful as well that, look, we are in a sort of temporary order, but just be okay with chaos that's coming, and it's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. We're going to survive. And just need to do some psychology from time to time, and that's, even in business, that's the way it is. So
that's interesting that you mentioned the East and West sort of dichotomy. How would you say the Eastern cultures handle innovation as compared to the Western cultures?
Look, I mean, I don't know if you mean beside business, because I've never, to be honest, I never worked in Asia, so I'm not going to talk about Asian companies. But depending on the country, for example, I know that for Japan, I've been in Japan and Korea recently, and I know, for example, that in terms of order, they are very, very ordered. I work for a client in France, typically in a automotive industry, and he's collaborating with a Japanese car company. They are like doing alliance together, right? And so I know from calls and feedbacks from colleagues and everything that the processes for example, in Japan are very strict. Like if you don't follow the process, you may get fired. It's just easy as that. No innovation is required unless it comes from top down, unless they ask you to innovate. In this case,
innovation.
In this case, you need to innovate, otherwise you're fired. So you just need to. So it's very.
And this is how you have to innovate. No.
But it's same, like in China, for example. I know like China is very innovative right now compared to the past, right? With many tech companies, Alibaba and Xiaomi and so on. And I put it in my classes as well. It's very interesting to see the way they innovate. It's not like I'm an entrepreneur like in the US and I just go and like do my business research and put my product and try and fail and grow up. it's more of, like it's more of like governmental support. Like, okay, we want this field, we want the automotive industry, put a lot of budget in it, put a lot of loans. You can take a loan for almost free, and then just go and invest, right? And there are, of course, some entrepreneurs that take the lead there and build. But yeah, it's I would say China is different, but Japan and Korea, for example, are very structured into order. But generally top down, right? I mean, in the business at least.
What would you say is the sort of like the thing that cracks most people open? Because a lot of times when you're trying to develop innovations, and I've done this in ideation sessions a lot, is get people to sort of break out of their day-to-day. Because that's what a lot of times they come into the meeting and they're focused on their day-to-day, and you need to get them broken out of that day-to-day sense so that they can actually think about new things and innovate and create. Have you found any tactics that really work well when you do that?
Just your question reminds me of something called sponsorship in business, right? So if you don't have a good sponsor, which is mostly if you are an external player and you come in, you sell your service and you're like, okay, you want to bring value to the company that you don't really necessarily know deep down, right? You never worked there for like, but it's so hard if you don't empathize with people. And if there's no sponsor from the intern, so someone from like CFO, CEO, whatever, depending on the project.
Yeah, you absolutely need to have an executive sponsor.
Yeah,
it's essential.
Definitely needs to come there and be present and tell people like, okay, look, we need to do this change because there is value, and if we don't do it, then we're gonna be losing like our ground to the competition or other justification of the business case. But yeah, definitely there is a sponsorship issue here. But more like ground level, there is a work of motivation, and there are two types of motivation of people. Remember that, right? Internal and external. So either you will do this because it will make your life better, and it's true. For example, AI, if you just implement it, you will maybe make your life more productive, right? You don't have to write on email all the time. Just give it whatever you need, and then ChatGPT will give you the email, and it's great, fantastic, saves time. But so people understand this kind of external motivation in terms of saving time, in terms of saving maybe even money. You will save 1 hour in your day when you go to see your kids before 6. It's fun. But also internal motivation, which is you are in a company. Do you just, as a person, do you just want to be like doing the same thing over and over again, or do you want to have some fun and just play over? Maybe you add it to your CV in the future. Maybe it will maybe you will move from your position to another one when the project is already in. So there is, you need to play on this human kind of, we are human at the end of the day. So you need to play on this kind of things, features, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that happens, because we're doing this shift from everybody sort of like a corporate cog in a machine to, oh, now we're a bunch of individuals that, we need to bring our authenticity into the workplace. And it's good that we're seeing this kind of thing happening.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you.
So from your perspective, what do you think is the most challenging thing for companies who want to try and innovate?
Money. Well, obviously that's easy. I mean,
well, it's like, have you read the book Loon Shots? Have you read the book Loon Shots? And basically, it's a guy wrote how the concept is that only the US government, only governments can innovate, because governments don't incentivize on profitability, right? So companies who incentivize on profitability, people are not going to spend time innovating. They're going to be spending time, schmoozing or getting the promotion or whatever, because that's what raises you up in an organization. You get paid more every time you advance. But in government agencies, there's none of this stuff going on. So they're free to be more innovative. So do you think something like you said, money, the profit motive is the thing that keeps companies from innovating as much as they should?
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, I'm not sure about the government thing, because I know, anyway, in France, I know that it's not really necessarily the case. But Chile recently, when they updated their tax website, which is important, after COVID, spending so much money. But look, yeah, I mean, you remind me of something here, because I think it was in a book or in a I don't know, I talked with a colleague, and it's true. So when you incentivize people externally with money, they will do things faster and in a more performance way, maybe, right? If they do it on a continuous basis. So you want to, like, for example, workers in a plant, they will be faster and they'll be more productive. That's if you put more money in it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to creativity, which is very crucial topic to innovation, money is not necessarily the core, right? The more money you put, the more stress you. There was this experiment, social experiment, right? And they put like money. They tested many people, and they put money on people to be creative. They gave them some games, and those who did not get money were more creative and solved the problem more easily than others, because the others feel stressed, like there's stress, there's money, someone is pushing me, but so the brain just blocks and you can't get outside the box, right? And so same, I think for companies, when I said money, it's not necessarily putting more money in the projects, but rather when there is a lack of money, there is a lack of resources to innovate. That's one way of looking at it. But also, if the project is as big as, for example, SAP or ERP or whatever, I mean, mostly. So we're talking mostly about implementation, to be honest. So we need some budget to implement big projects, whether it's AI, whether it's SAP, whether other topic. But then again, if you want to innovate properly and just be creative outside the box, then I think you need to gather. It's more about talent than about money, right? So gather the right talents in the right place, transversal talents. Give them the resources that they need, access to, for example, to the business side, access to question other people, maybe external resources, consultants, and so on. And then you would expect them to give some output, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when it gets tricky, because once they get the output, most of it will go to the trash. And when it gets to the trash, yeah, I mean, when it gets to the trash, and they feel it, because when you work for R&D and your idea is not taken, then what do? You just you don't feel good, right? Because, okay, I spent so much time, and you're like, the business side will be like, oh, our clients are not interested, just throw it. So you need to find a way to motivate those people by like just at least guiding them in the beginning, saying, okay, we're gonna focus on this strategy. Please innovate in this way. Don't just do anything.
I find recognition is the big deal for inventors,
very
innovators
big,
within organizations. If you pay them, that's one thing. You're going to get certain kinds of innovations when you pay them.
Yeah.
Probably incremental. But if you recognize them, like take them here's the top inventor of the quarter or something like that. Recognition within the organization is a huge incentive for a lot of people within these corporate.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely. I mean, there is not only financial recognition, incentives, and so on, but rather, as you said, like just showing who did the best prototype this semester, or do some what we call hackathons, right? Just competitions, and let people compete in a prize, right? On a prize.
Yeah.
Make them participate in some forums about innovation. In Paris, we have forums in innovation in Versailles and so on. So you can have some fun sort of things around innovation, so they could feel, because it's mostly engineers and mostly, let's say, not in a bad way, but like nerdy people that like this kind of creative stuff, right? Just spending their
nothing
life.
Wrong with nerds.
No, I mean, I'm a nerd myself. It's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna judge them. But it's more about, we know how it works. They are more like into introverts, kind of. You need to be an introvert to like really innovate. Be by yourself and just think and create and have fun and play around. But at some point, once you go out to the world, you would expect a certain, okay, welcoming, like, okay, you spent a lot of time alone, now it's time to just congratulate you. So it's funny, but
so before we go to think like a futurist, tell me, like, what's the one big insight you had when you were writing your book? What's the one big insight you'd want to communicate in your book?
Well, it's if I have to choose one.
I'm sure there's tons in there, but just like, what would you say is the most key?
Easy. I think it's just the fundamental identity of innovation, which it's mostly makes the structure of the book from start to the end in different fields, which kind of summarizes innovation not only for business but in all life, because it's about creation, right? So as I said, and creation means you create something new, which is not only in business but could be in a political movement, could be a religious movement, could be money, could be belief, could be so many things in life that we create all around, right? Mental or physical. Yeah. And so the innovation was like, innovation equal pretty much create like need plus motivation. That's the prerequisites. So you need to have a need for the innovation, otherwise it's not useless. It's useful. Sorry, it's just an invention, right? Need for someone of some people, hopefully. Plus motivation. There's a motivated person, an entrepreneur, project manager, who will take ahead the innovation and change and manage the change. And then we move to the process, creativity plus technology. You need some sort of creativity to bring something new to the market or to the world. Technology is about implementation. How are you going to do it? Flying, for example, was impossible 50 years ago. I don't know, 100 years ago, right?
100 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, but because there was now technology was not there, so it was not mature enough, right? And then there's the end is post innovation, which is value. So the idea is there is innovation brings value, and its value depends on me and you. You see the iPhone differently than I see it, right? The value of the iPhone, for example, right? So the value is very subjective, and this is what marketing plays on. Trying to market an innovation means trying to change the perception of people about your products, for example, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
this is like the most I would say the core of the book.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is time. Let's think like a futurist. It's the year 2033. 10 years from now, where do you think the world's going to be in 10 years? Do you think? Yeah, where do you think the world will be?
That's well, yeah. Now it's like 10 years before.
Do you think
like,
things will be more innovative? Do you think there'll be less innovation? Do you think where are we going to be?
Yeah. Look, I touched on this as well in the book, but I think we reach maturity, to be honest, in many fields. Okay, it depends on the fields. Let's be honest, right? I mean, we don't see a new recipe every day. Just like if you go to France,
especially those AI recipes. Do not
do not try them at home, right?
do not make any. Do not ask your AI to create a recipe for you, because it's like Bender's rule. I created this thing called Bender's rule. It's like, do you remember Futurama, the show Futurama?
Yeah.
So there's a robot in there, and he's always aspired to be a chef. And they let him be a chef one day, and the food that he created was so bad that it almost killed the crew. And it was because AI can't taste, right? So.
True, it's true. I mean, it's part of the consciousness, human consciousness, that we still didn't pass necessarily to AI. But I think with enough database, it can do it. I mean, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I think there are many industries, like for example, air flights, right? Planes, for example, like Airbus, and we have Boeings. I mean, we have more or less the same commercial airplane. I mean, with some enhancements, what we call incremental innovation, right? So I believe in many industries, we're just gonna focus on incremental innovation, enhancing productivity, enhancing this, enhancing that. But overall, the product is there. There is nothing much to innovate deeply, right, in the industry, right? So yeah, that's what I think. But look, there's also other industries, particularly in terms of the data revolution, which I believe will continue to transform our lives. So basically, AI, which is just the beginning of this wave. Definitely will have a lot of changes in terms of jobs, for example, job creation, job loss, job movements from one side to the other, optimizing productivity within companies. Tasks can be still be automatic with AI. Look, like self-driving cars, I'm not very confident about that in 10 years. We have like just fully autonomous cars as Tesla promises. But you never know. So I'm just saying that we can have cars that will take most of the road, but then you will need to be behind the seat to just pay attention in case, right? I would say, yeah, that's pretty much like in the data technology area, we'll have more disruptive innovations, but in other areas, so many other areas, we're already mature. We will not see just a virtual table yet, I think. I think nobody.
So you don't have a lot of faith in VR, MR?
Yeah, I mean, look, to be honest, no. I mean, personally, it's just my personal. I don't know about the market. I'm not the market, so I'm not the right audience, maybe. But just putting the glasses, unless there is a need. Again, we come back to the idea of need. Why the virtual glasses? That's the question. And if Zoom is enough to talk to you, why would I need to see you right in front without necessarily being able to touch you? Do you see my point?
Yeah.
Unless we add this feature of touching and all this kind of consciousness sort of features added to the virtual reality, we're not going to be there yet. We're not going to be in the matrix yet, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be more of a fun game if you want to play a game with other friends or something like that, more for gaming, but not for necessarily.
Yeah. I think the key thing there is to get something that's actually what's the word, acceptable by people to use. Like, for example, look at these things, right? These headphones. When
Yeah,
they first came out, people were like, "Oh boy, that looks stupid." Now everybody wears them, right?
exactly.
It's the same thing with AR glasses. If you've seen those Apple Vision Pro, those
Yeah,
look,
so
I
yeah.
mean, I can't imagine somebody wearing those all day, but apparently you can't. But if they turn that form, like this is version 1, right? Version 2, version 5, version 10, the form factor will be a regular pair of eyeglasses. And once they get to the regular pair of eyeglasses, people are going to be like, "Oh yeah, I want to use that." And why wouldn't they? Right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, there is something. Yeah, I mean, there is something about the in IT we call agile management, right? So just create basic MVP, like
Yeah.
minimum product, and then you continue enhancing, and then till you reach something nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are in the beginning of this trend, but it's just right now as it is with the price it's on the market. I think it will be more for like trendy CEOs to show off a bit and like do
Oh, for
some
sure. For
nice
sure.
nice seminars
Absolutely.
and so on. But it wouldn't be for me just to put the glasses in the class
Yeah.
and talk to students, you know. So so
Another 10 years,
yeah, 10 years
there'll
it would
be
be. It could
augmented
be.
reality everywhere.
We'll see. Yeah, it could be. But you're true. But you remember the Google glasses, right?
Oh yeah, I tried those.
It wasn't, I mean, it was a flop. It wasn't good, right? It wasn't a success.
The
So
problem is the screen was so tiny, you could barely see it. But if
yeah,
you
okay. I
have
never tried
something
them to
that
be honest.
covers like the Apple Vision Pro does, if it covers your whole vision, then it'll be a lot more useful. So I
All
mean,
right.
they're heading there, but the problem is, I don't know if you're like me with this, but everything seems to be going so slow. It's like we should have had this stuff 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, Apple has this phase of exploitation, you know, like big companies. And that's what's also interesting about innovation or tricky is that even if you are the most innovative company, you don't want to just throw everything on the market at one time, right?
Yeah,
You want this slow process because there's still demand for your old products, and you don't want to cannibalize it with the new products that just comes to the market from you. It's like just
yeah,
cannibalizing yourself. It doesn't make sense. So
yeah,
Apple just creates iPhone after iPhone after iPhone, and then when people are tired of iPhone, then okay, here's the glass. Just take the
yeah,
glass.
yeah. They're still in the
So
exploitation
yeah,
phase right now.
exactly right. So yeah,
Well, that's why they're the most supposedly innovative company in the world.
the most
So they,
capitalized company in the world. I mean,
exactly.
yeah, we'll see.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. So if somebody wants to
Yeah,
get in
thanks,
touch with
Chris.
you, what's the best way?
Well, look, I can share my LinkedIn for sure. It's the easiest way to connect with professionals, right?
Hmm.
With my consulting company, which is Project Dev, so it's just on LinkedIn. It's easier to contact me. But otherwise, the book is available on Amazon if you have, or Audible as well, if you want to go deeper into the innovation topic.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's easier way. I think I'm not gonna. It's easier for people.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
put the show notes. I'll put the links to
yeah, great,
everything
sure,
in the show notes below.
perfect,
All
perfect.
right. Well,
Thank you,
thank you, sir.
Chris.
Great
Yeah,
talking with you.
thank you, Chris. Yeah,
All right.
great. Have a
Bye
good day.
bye.
Bye bye.